Her fiancé got the maid pregnant and she married his boss, unaware he's a Korean mafia. Zara was halfway down the hallway when a door opened. The maid came out unannounced and they both collided. The pregnancy strip fell. Zara looked at the maid, shocked.
Are you pregnant?
The maid was shaking, terrified, muttering a lot of words.
And it is his.
Zara murmured under her breath. If this story already has something moving in your chest, then you are exactly where you are supposed to be. Hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell right now, because we tell Afro-Korean stories on this channel every single week, and you do not want to miss what is coming. Now, let us go back to where this all began. Zara was not the kind of woman who needed a long introduction. Her work introduced her. She had graduated at the top of her class in the way that made professors remember her name years after she had left their classrooms. While her classmates were sending out job applications, Zara was writing a business plan. She started her software company at 24 with her savings, a laptop, and the specific stubbornness of a woman who has decided she is not going to spend her life building someone else's dream. There were months where she could not pay herself. Months where the contracts were slow and the pressure was suffocating, and every sensible person in her life was quietly suggesting she consider a plan B. She did not consider a plan B. She kept building. And then one day, the way it happens when you refuse to stop, it worked. Her software was sophisticated, secure, sought after. Companies paid well for what she built, and she built it better than almost anyone else in the market. She was 27 years old, and she had done all of it herself. What she had not done was find someone worth trusting with the parts of her that existed outside of work. Then Junho walked in. Junho was Korean. He was handsome the way certain men are handsome, effortlessly, without appearing to try. He had an easy smile and a way of making whoever he was talking to feel like the most important person in the room. He pursued Zara with intention, not desperately, not obviously, with the patient, focused energy of a man who has decided he wants something and is going to be strategic about getting it. And Zara, brilliant in every room she had ever walked into, fell for him. Because love does not care how intelligent you are. Love finds the gap between what you know and what you want to believe, and it lives there comfortably for as long as you let it. What she did not see was what was happening on the other side of his smile. Junho was a man who had been working hard his entire life and watching other people pull ahead. What he did not have was the thing that separated people like Zara from people like him, and the name of that thing was genius. Pure, original, undeniable genius. He recognized it in her immediately, and he resented it just as immediately, not loudly, not in a way he would ever say out loud. But it was there underneath every compliment he gave her, this quiet, simmering resentment that she had something he could not work hard enough to have. When he proposed to her 8 months in, she cried. She said yes before he had finished asking. She held his face in her hands and looked at him like he was the reward for every hard year she had ever lived through. He looked back at her and smiled, and calculated. Junho worked for a finance company called Shin Capital. On paper, Shin Capital was a legitimate investment firm. Impressive offices, suited employees, real transactions, conducted with real precision. Off-paper Shin Capital was something else entirely. It was a front, a sophisticated, well-maintained front for a criminal organization that had been cleaning money for other criminal organizations for over a decade. Billions moved through those accounts every year, quietly, efficiently, without leaving traces. The man behind Shin Capital was Jae-won Kwon, 36 years old, rarely photographed, never discussed in polite company. The kind of man whose name made other dangerous men careful about how they said it. He had inherited the organization from his father and spent 10 years expanding it with a cold intelligence that even his enemies respected. He did not run the company out of passion. He ran it out of legacy, out of the specific obligation of a man who was born into something and understood that walking away was not as simple as deciding to walk away. He had rules. The most important rule was this: you did not steal from him. Nobody stole from Jae-won Kwon until Junyo. Junho had been working at Shin Capital for 2 years when he figured out what it really was. A smarter man would have quietly resigned. A more moral man would have been horrified. Junho saw an opportunity. He studied the company's financial architecture carefully over several months. He understood the accounts, the flows, the gaps. He understood enough to know that what he was planning was possible. But he needed the right tool. He had the right tool. He had been living with it. He had been sleeping beside it. He had been celebrating its success at dinner parties and introducing it to his colleagues with a pride that was, he told himself, genuine. Zara's software. She had shown him things over the years, not carelessly, not stupidly, but with the openness of a woman who trusted the man she was going to marry. She had explained her systems to him. She had let him see the architecture of what she built because they were going to be partners in life, and she had nothing to hide. He used every single thing she showed him. He accessed her software without her knowledge. He used it to build a hack so precise, so sophisticated, that anyone investigating it would find her company's fingerprints on every layer. Then he executed it. $1 billion, gone from Shin Capital's accounts in a single night. He quit his job the following week and told Zara he had decided he was ready to build something of his own. She was proud of him. She told everyone she knew. She had no idea she was celebrating a theft, her own destruction, wrapped in a dinner reservation and a bottle of wine she paid for. When Junho got money, he got a lifestyle, staff, cleaners, people to manage the penthouse he upgraded them into. Zara had not asked for any of it, but she adjusted. Mina came with the second round of hires. She was 25, pretty in a way she understood how to use. Within 2 weeks, Zara felt something she could not name, the low, persistent frequency of a woman's instinct telling her something is wrong. Something is off. A specific person is taking up a specific kind of space they have no business occupying. She watched Mina, the way she dressed, always slightly beyond what the job required, the way she found reasons to be in rooms that Junho was in. Zara raised it with him. He told her she was imagining things. She raised it again. He snapped. She went quiet. She stayed because she loved him, and dismantling it over something she could not prove felt like the greater loss. What she did not know was that Mina was never a woman who stumbled into something. Mina had seen Junho's money, his lifestyle, the penthouse, the trajectory of a man whose company was growing fast. She had decided before she ever walked through their front door that she was going to make herself useful in the way that mattered most to men like him. Men like Junho were easy. She performed softness. She listened with the particular attentiveness that men who are not getting enough attention at home find impossible to resist. Junho crossed the line within 3 months. And then he kept crossing it, because that is the thing about men like him. They cross once, and the guilt becomes a thing they schedule for later, and later never comes. He told Mina things. He told her Zara meant nothing, that he had only stayed because of company access and connections. He told Mina she was the woman he actually wanted. He told her the engagement would be ending soon. He just needed to sort a few things first. He had been saying this for 4 months. But there was a secret about Mina that nobody in that penthouse knew. Junho was not the only man she was sleeping with. Mina knew Junho was just a means to an end. She could never love a man so easy. There was another man she actually loved and had been seeing on the side. But now her secret was about to come out because the test in her hand read positive. She had taken it 3 times, 3 different brands, 3 different mornings. It did not change. She was pregnant, and the child was not Junho's. She knew this. The timing alone told her, but Junho did not count days. And a man who believes a child is his is a man with a reason to finally stop delaying. She needed to move fast. She was somewhere between 3 and 5 weeks pregnant, and in another 4 to 6 weeks, there would be no hiding it. If Zara noticed before Mina had made her move, if the situation was discovered on Zara's terms instead of hers, she would lose everything. Removed from this penthouse, this life. Lover Kaman wanna say. This proximity to money she had worked very hard to get close to. She needed to control the reveal. She thought about it for 3 days. Then she made her decision. She was going to be seen. Not caught, seen. There was a difference. Being caught meant losing control of the moment. Being seen, deliberately, at exactly the right time, meant owning it. On the other side of Seoul, in a building that did not appear on any public registry, Jae-won Kwon sat at the head of a table and looked at a name on a screen. Zara, owner and founder of a software company. Soo-hyun had laid out the evidence with the efficiency of a man who had done this many times in many rooms. The software used in the breach belonged to her company. The fingerprints were clean. The trace was documented. "Get me the surveillance," Jae-won said. "I need the full report before anything moves." Nobody asked why. They never did. This was the standard. Before he acted on anything, he verified completely. You watched first. Then you moved. It was the reason the men in this room were still breathing when men who had operated differently were not. Jae-won stood up. The meeting was over. The first report came back in 48 hours. Photographs, timestamps, the movements of a woman going about her life with no knowledge that anyone was paying attention. Jae-won read the report. He was looking for the behavioral shape of a person who had done what this woman was accused of doing. People who carried that kind of secret carried it in their bodies. It showed in how they moved, how they looked over their shoulder, how they managed the space around them. He requested the photographs. She was coming out of her building in the first one. Early morning. The city behind her, still gray. She had a bag over one shoulder and a coffee cup in her hand, and she was looking somewhere ahead of her with the expression of a woman already thinking about where she was going before she had finished leaving where she was. He looked at this photograph for a moment longer than the others. He moved to the next one. She was at a street stall, saying something to the woman behind the counter. Whatever she said made the vendor laugh. You could see it in her face, even from across the street. Zara was laughing too. Not politely, fully. He looked at this one longer than the first. He went through the rest. Ordinary photographs of an ordinary day. He stacked them and requested video footage. For completeness. That was why. The footage confirmed what the photographs had started to tell him. She arrived at her office at 7:14 a.m. before her staff. She worked the way people work when they have forgotten anyone else exists. She stopped at the same street stall on Tuesday evenings, same order, same table if it was available, same vendor who already had her food going before she reached the counter. She was not moving like someone carrying something. She was not managing herself. She was just present, fully, naturally present in her own life with the ease of a woman who had nothing to hide and nothing to perform. By the end of the first week, Soo-hyun had noticed something he did not comment on. Jae-won was reviewing the surveillance materials himself, sitting with the photographs, watching the footage, calling down for additional coverage. Soo-hyun said nothing. He had worked for Jae-won for 8 years. There were things that were his to say and things that were not. On the 14th day, Jae-won told Soo-hyun he wanted to do a direct pass. "I want 30 seconds of direct proximity," he said. "Arrange the route." He got out of the car 2 blocks from her building. He walked at a pace that would bring him level with her at the right moment. He saw her coming from half a block away. In her head, her eyes slightly ahead of where she actually was, her pace automatic. They converged. She almost walked into him, caught herself, looked up. He looked at her. All 14 days of footage, all the photographs, all the Tuesday evenings and Thursday mornings, none of it had prepared him for her in person. For the specific quality of her eyes when they looked at him directly, open, present. The eyes of a woman who looked at the world without armor on. She apologized. He said something his mouth produced without his full participation. She smiled briefly and walked away. He stood on that pavement longer than he needed to. He walked back to the car. He looked out the window at Seoul going past. He said nothing. for the entire drive. And somewhere in a room he had not built yet and was not ready to furnish, something had just moved in and was not planning to leave. He went to her 3 days later. He called Soo-hyun, told him to arrange a meeting with Zara in her office, and when Soo-hyun did that, he told him. He went. Alone. No driver at the door. She was at her desk when he came in. She stood. "Can I help you?" Direct, not unfriendly. The voice of a woman in the middle of something giving him her attention anyway. He closed the door. Sat across from her, without being invited to, with the ease of a man who had sat in many rooms and decided for himself where he belonged. "My name is Jae-won Kwon," he said. "I own a company called Shin Capital." He watched her face. Nothing. No recognition. Just a woman listening to a stranger and waiting to understand why, not knowing she had met him before. 3 months ago, $1 billion was stolen from Shin Capital. The software used to do it belongs to your company. The stillness on her face broke, not into guilt, not into the calculating composure of someone managing a caught moment. It broke into confusion first, and then something sharper, moving in behind it. What? Not performed. The single syllable of a person who has heard something that does not fit inside the world they thought they were living in. "Your software," he said. "Your company's fingerprints. On every layer of it." He watched her face move, every thought, in real time, unmanaged, completely unguarded. She was calculating something, not in a guilty way. In the way of a person being handed a piece of a puzzle they did not know they were building. "When, are you sure?" she said. "Do you know the exact date this happened?" He told her. She went still, not the stillness of composure, the stillness of a person who has just felt the ground move underneath them. The silence lasted long enough that he considered saying something. He did not. He waited. She looked up at him, and in her eyes was the same thing he had seen on a pavement 3 days ago. The open, unguarded look of a woman with nothing to hide, only now mixed with something else. The beginning of understanding something she was going to wish she did not understand. "Why are you telling me this yourself?" It was the right question. He had asked himself a version of it 3 times before coming here. "Because I am not certain," he said, "that you are the person I am looking for." "Are you certain I'm not?" "No, I am not certain of that either." She looked at him, really looked, the way you look at someone when you are deciding whether to trust them. "How long do I have to find the truth before you stop waiting for it?" she asked him. "Come to me when you know something," he said. "Don't take too long." He stood. She stood. For a moment, they were both just standing in the quiet of her office with $1 billion and everything she had ever built sitting in the space between them. "Mr. Kwon," he looked at her. "Thank you for coming here instead of—" She stopped. She did not finish. She did not need to. He nodded once and left. He was in the car before he acknowledged that his heart was beating slightly faster than it should have been for a meeting that was entirely professional. He told his driver to go and looked out the window and focused very deliberately on the investigation and what the date had meant to her and what it meant for finding the real culprit. Just that. He was very focused on just that. 3 blocks from her building, Zara stopped walking. Her hands were shaking. She looked down at them. She had sat across from that man and been steady and asked the right questions and held it together all the way down the elevator and through the lobby and out the door and 3 blocks down the street. 3 blocks. Then her hands started shaking because she knew that time frame. She knew exactly what happened during that period. She remembered what came after that period. The investors, the announcement, the company, his face when she told him how proud she was. She started walking again. Faster. She was going home. She was going to walk through that door and get the truth out of him if it was the last thing she did in that apartment. She did not know that another truth was already waiting for her in the hallway. She did not know that a woman had been waiting for her to come in today. Today of all days was the day she had chosen to move. Zara entered into the house. She moved through the hallways, and that was when Mina decided to step out of the bathroom with a very planned pregnancy strip in her hand that showed positive. That was when Zara collided with Mina. The pregnancy test slipped from Mina's hand and hit the marble floor, and the sound it made was so small. Such a small, quiet plastic sound. The kind of sound that should mean nothing. Zara stopped walking. She looked at the test on the floor. She looked at Mina. Mina, who had been in this house for 8 months. Mina, who wore what she wore and positioned herself where she positioned herself, and who Zara had raised with Junho not once, but 3 times. 3 times she had said something is wrong. 3 times she had been told she was paranoid, insecure, too focused on work to appreciate a faithful man. She had chosen to believe him. She had talked herself out of her own eyes because the man she loved told her to. Mina had started talking too fast, words tripping over each other, rehearsed so many times they had lost their shape. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He told me it was over between you. He told me he didn't love you anymore. He said he was going to end the engagement. Zara looked at her, at this woman standing in her hallway with another man's promises written all over her face and a pregnancy test on the floor between them. She felt something move through her that was not what she expected. Not the hot chaos of betrayal. Something colder, stiller. The specific stillness of a woman who has just understood she was not blindsided, that the signs were always there, that she saw every single one of them and chose, over and over and over again, to look away. That was the thing that was going to take the longest to forgive herself for. Not him, herself. Are you pregnant? Her voice came out quiet, completely controlled. Mina's face was doing several things at once, calculation and fear fighting each other. And underneath both of them, if you looked carefully, the high-wire anxiety of a plan that has been set in motion and cannot be called back. Answer me. Yes, Mina whispered. And it's his. Not a question. The way you say something, you have known for a long time and spent months refusing to know. She walked past Mina to Junho's office, opened the door without knocking. He looked up with the irritation of a man who was not expecting to be interrupted. He saw her face. The irritation became something more careful. How much, she said quietly, do you have to hate me to do this? What are you talking about? The maid is pregnant, Junho. He leaned back slowly. That has nothing to do with me. Look me in the eye and say that. You're being... I will bring her in here, right now. 4 seconds of silence. Everything unsaid between them for months, sitting in the room like a third person. He said nothing. She walked back to the hallway. She told Mina to come. Mina walked in. The desk between Junho and Zara. Her to the side. A triangle. An impossible geometry. She had imagined this moment. Imagined the relief on his face. The finality. The I choose you she had been waiting for. She was not looking at that face. She was looking at a man going careful. Going still. Looking at her, the way you look at something that has complicated your life. Mina, are you pregnant? Zara asked. Something flickered across Mina's face. The last of whatever she had hoped this moment would look like. She straightened. Yes, ma'am, she said. And it's yours, sir. You know it's yours. Junho looked at Mina, then at Zara. And then, quietly, deliberately, like a man who has decided if everything is burning, he might as well hold the match. Well, you can't blame me. She was more of a woman than you've ever been. The room absorbed this. Zara did not move, did not flinch, did not give him the satisfaction of watching her break. Okay, now tell me where you got the money, Junho. Something changed on his face. What? Your company, your investors, the capital that appeared from nowhere right after you quit your job. Where did it come from? The performance of indignation went somewhere, and what sat in its place was something more guarded. The stillness of a man who has heard a question he did not expect. I don't owe you. Did you use my software? The stillness became absolute. 1 second. 1 single second where his face did not move, and his eyes did not move, and everything he had been managing came apart at the seams because his body reacted before his mind could catch up and he could not stop it from showing. She had her answer. Get out of my office. I've always known you were jealous of my progress. Did you steal? Get out. She looked at him for a long time. This man who had taken everything she gave him and used it, not in a moment of weakness, deliberately, patiently, he had proposed to her. Gone down on one knee with those eyes, and she had cried and said yes, and felt like every hard year had been worth it. And he had turned around to stab her in the back. She had been a resource. That was all. I will find every single thing, she said. All of it. She walked out, packed one bag, just one, the small one that had been to 3 countries with her, deliberately, without rushing. She zipped it, picked it up, walked to the front door. She left. She did not look back once, not because she was not breaking, but because he did not deserve to see it. Now, before we go any further, I need to ask you something. Have you ever loved someone so completely that you talked yourself out of your own eyes? Have you ever seen the signs and chosen not to see them because the alternative was too painful? Tell us in the comments. Because I promise you, you are not alone in this. And also, if you're enjoying this story, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you'll have more updates because we post thrilling stories like this every day. She was in a hotel room that first night. One bag, her laptop, the silence of a woman who has just had the floor removed from under her life. She opened her laptop. When everything collapsed, Zara did not collapse with it. She worked. She was 5 hours into tracing the unauthorized entry in her system when her phone started lighting up. A client, then a colleague, then a journalist. And she opened the first news article at 2:17 inches the morning. Her company's name, the words financial theft, software breach, $1 billion. She read the statement at the bottom. Junio's statement. It was measured. Sad. The statement of a man who had discovered something terrible about someone he loved and was choosing to speak about it with dignity. He said he had become aware of financial irregularities connected to his former fiancee's company. He said he had ended the engagement immediately. He said he was cooperating with any investigation. He said he was heartbroken. He was crying in the photograph attached to the statement. He had set her up. She put her phone face down on the bed. He had not just stolen from her, had not just cheated, had not just ended the engagement. He had framed her, used her software to commit the crime, and handed her name to the public as the criminal. Given every journalist, every client, every person who had ever respected what she built, a story. Simple, clean, believable. But the brilliant black woman who built a software company and used it to steal, he had given them that story and then cried about it. Her company accounts were frozen by morning. 3 major clients sent termination letters before noon. She sat in that hotel room and finally let herself break down. All the things she had done for him, all her sacrifices, all his promises. He had not just betrayed her. He had destroyed everything she had worked for. She wiped her tears. She opened her laptop. She kept working. J1 saw the news at 6 a.m. Her name, her company, the theft, the statement, measured, sad, perfectly constructed. He had spoken to this woman less than 72 hours ago. He had watched her face when he told her about the breach, and he had been certain as he had been about anything, that she did not know. And now her name was in every headline. He thought about the timing of this statement. Less than 48 hours after she walked out of her office to go home and find the truth. He looked at the photograph of the man crying. He sat at his desk for a long time. He found her on the 3rd day. He did not tell Soo-hyun where he was going. He told his driver an address, and he sat in the back of the car, and he looked out the window, and he did not examine what he was doing or why he was doing it. He had the address because he had the surveillance team, and the surveillance team had been thorough. That was the reason. He needed to speak to her. He had information relevant to the situation, and she needed to hear it. That was the reason. He did not examine the reason. She opened the door, and he understood immediately that she had not been sleeping. Not from the way she looked. She was composed, dressed. The way he was learning was simply how she carried herself. But her eyes, Something 3 days in a hotel room with her name in every headline had put there. She stepped back and let him in. Her one bag was on the floor, her laptop open on the desk with notes spread beside it. She had been working. He looked at the desk, at the specific quality of the work spread across that surface. Something moved through him. He could not have named cleanly. She sat on the edge of the bed. He sat in the chair across from her. And she told him about Junho, the timeline, the date, the money, the statement. She read at 2 a.m. Her voice did not break. But something in the quality of it changed when she said certain words. Something there, and then quickly managed. He saw it, said nothing, let her finish. When she stopped, the room was very quiet. He looked at her sitting on that bed, with her one bag on the floor, and her laptop open, and her name in every headline outside these walls, and he thought about what was coming, not just from him, from the other organizations, other families whose money moved through Shin Capital, men who would not make the distinction between a person who stole and a person whose name was on the thing used to steal. They wanted someone to pay. Right now, she was the only someone they had. He opened his mouth to tell her this. He looked at her face. He closed his mouth, and then he heard himself say something he had not planned to say, something that surprised him in the way very few things surprised him anymore. "Marry me." She stared at him. He could not have explained to anyone what had happened in the 30 seconds before those two words came out. What it was about watching this woman sit in this ordinary room, with everything she had built dismantled around her, and still having her notes spread on that desk, and her laptop open, and her back straight. "My name will protect you," he said. "Anyone who knows what my name means knows not to touch my wife. Anyone. And you will have access to everything. My legal team, my resources, whatever you need to fight this." She looked at him like she was waiting for the price, for the angle, because she was a woman who had just been comprehensively destroyed by a man she trusted, and she was not going to make that mistake again. "Why would you do this?" He did not have a clean answer. He could feel the whole truth somewhere he was not ready to look. "Because you didn't steal from me," he said. "And what is coming for you is not fair." That was true. It was not everything, but it was true. She stood up and walked to the window and stood there with her back to him, very straight, very still. The posture of a woman carrying something enormous who has decided not to put it down where anyone can see. He watched her for a while, and then he looked away. She turned from the window. Her eyes were dry, but underneath the composure he could see it, real fear, not of him, of the size of what he had meant by his name would protect her. Protect her from what? She thought to herself. "I need time," she said. "Don't take too long," he said at the door. "The people I'm trying to protect you from don't wait." He gave her his number, and he left. She stood in the middle of that hotel room and thought about her frozen accounts, her locked company, the termination letters, the organizations he had described, men who would want someone to pay. She thought about Junho crying in that photograph. She was scared, not manageable fear, the deep kind that makes it hard to breathe properly. The kind that comes when you are standing at the edge of something enormous and you cannot see the bottom, and the only reason you are considering jumping is that the thing behind you is worse. She was scared. She was utterly alone, and she was running out of time. She called him on the second day. Because the second day, an envelope arrived under the hotel room door with no name on it. She opened it and sat very still with it for a long time. She did not know who sent it. She knew what it meant. She picked up her phone, found his number, called it. He picked up on the second ring. "Okay," she said. A pause. "Okay," he said. That was all. They married on a Friday morning. No ceremony, no guests. 2 witnesses from Jaewon's legal team, a registrar who asked the required questions and stamped the required documents. She wore a simple dress she bought the day before. He wore a dark suit. They did not exchange vows beyond the required words. By Friday afternoon, she was Mrs. Kwan. 4 days later, Junho knew. He put his phone down very carefully and then sat without moving for a very long time. He knew what that name meant. He had worked for that man's company. He understood exactly what the protection of that surname meant in the world they were all now living inside of. She had found her way to the one man with both the reason and the resources to keep her safe. His own frame had been the thing that delivered her there. The jealousy that moved through him was not the jealousy of a man in love. It was the jealousy of a man who had moved a piece on a board and watched it become his opponent's most powerful weapon. He went underground. He found a family, the park organization, that had operated in Seoul's shadows for 30 years without ever bowing to anyone. Old money, old danger. The kind that had survived long enough to believe itself untouchable. Junho told them Jaewon was protecting the woman who stole from every organization whose money moved through Shin Capital, including theirs. He had documents, evidence, constructed carefully with the same methodical patience he had used to construct everything else. They told him they would look into it. He left thinking he had one move left. He did not understand that he had just handed the last of himself to people who would not hesitate to take it. Zara moved into Jaewon's penthouse on a Saturday with one suitcase. She set up her workspace in the study, floor-to-ceiling windows, a desk better than anything she had ever owned, and she started working. She barely slept. She barely left the study. And then slowly, in the spaces between the work, she started noticing him. He was not what she expected. She had expected cold, the cold of a transaction. What she encountered was something she did not have a clean word for. He was careful with her, in ways that were not required and not announced. The first morning there was coffee on the kitchen counter, made exactly the way she took it. She had made it for herself once, in passing, when they were newly married. And he remembered and made a cup of coffee for her. He was already gone, no note, just the coffee. She stood in that kitchen and looked at it for a long moment. She told herself it was staff. She started paying attention. It was not staff. It was him. He remembered things she said without appearing to be listening. He arranged things for her comfort without announcing it. He did not perform warmth, but he was present in a way she had not experienced before. Genuinely, consistently, quietly present. And then there were the other things. The injury on his chest she noticed once when he came home late. He covered it quickly and changed the subject with the smooth ease of a man who had been doing that his entire life. The meetings that left him different, not visibly shaken. Jaewon Kwon did not do visibly shaken, but somewhere behind his eyes something had shifted and been managed, and it had cost him. The men who came to the penthouse sometimes and looked at her with a calculation that had nothing to do with attraction. She started losing sleep over him. Not the sick, anxious sleeplessness of her months with Junho. Something different. Something that felt uncomfortably like worry. She told herself she was just aware of the danger in her environment. She knew it was not just that. The call came on a Tuesday morning. She heard his voice change from the study. She was not trying to listen, but the penthouse carried sound in its particular quiet. She heard the tone before she heard the words. Then she heard enough words. His mother's voice, even through the phone, even in Korean, carried the specific register of a woman delivering a verdict. Controlled, precise, furious in the way of someone who has decided composure is more cutting than volume. He came back to the kitchen 20 minutes later. "Your mother?" she asked. "It's nothing." Jai won. Something in the directness of her gaze made him rearrange his answer. He sat down. He told her how his mother called the marriage an embarrassment, how she felt he brought a stranger brought into the family name without a word to the people who spent their lives building it. A nobody, from nowhere. His father had not called. "That's worse than calling," he said simply. "I'm sorry," she said, "for the trouble this is causing your family." He looked at her for a long moment. Something moved across his face she had not seen before. "You have nothing to apologize for. I made this decision. I would make it again. You didn't steal from me, and I'll ensure I find who did and punish him," he said. He said it directly, without decoration, like it was simply a fact he was reporting. She held his gaze for a second too long, then looked back at her laptop and told herself firmly it was just the transaction talking. She almost believed herself. She had been telling herself to focus on the case, on the evidence. That everything else, the closed doors, the lowered voices, the men who came and looked at her with calculations she could not decode, was not her business. She had been doing a very poor job of this. Because the things she was noticing were not small things. The blood on his shirt. She had seen it once when he came home late. She had lain in her room that night, thinking, what kind of man comes home with blood on his shirt and says that with that specific steadiness? The steadiness of a man for whom this was not the first time. Then the men. She had come out of the study for coffee and found two strangers in the sitting room who stood when she walked in, with the alertness of men whose bodies were always ready for something. Jaewon appeared immediately and said, "Go back to the study. I'll come find you." Not unkindly, but firmly. He came an hour later and asked about the case, and she watched his face the entire time and understood he was not going to tell her anything about what had just happened. Then the phone call, past midnight. His voice behind a closed door she had never been invited through. Low, Korean. She understood the word threat. She understood her own name. She stood in the hallway with her heart beating in a way she could not slow, and understood that whatever was being managed involved her and was not small and was not going to resolve quietly. She found him at the kitchen counter late one night, his back half to her, a glass of water he was not drinking, looking at the city like it owed him an answer. "Tell me what's really happening here," she said. He turned. "I'm living inside your world. I deserve to understand it." He was quiet. Jai won. He put his glass down. And he told her the architecture of it, the clean facade of the organization, who he was, what his family built, what he carried. The organization, the 10 years spent trying to reshape something his father handed him and expected him to maintain without question. She listened to all of it. Then, "Are you really just a CEO? Because I have been noticing a lot of things." "I do have things I can't tell you, Zara," he said slowly. "And that's because our marriage is arranged. I'm trying to ensure security of not just me, but my family and my organization." The truth was, he was afraid of what she'd do when she finally saw him fully. "How long is the marriage?" He went still. "The arrangement, the transaction, how long?" "Until you clear your name and give me the real culprit. Then you are free." The room was very quiet. She thought about the coffee made exactly right every morning, the things he remembered, the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, and she was always watching. She thought about all of it, and then she felt it, the specific, familiar, devastating feeling of a woman who has started to feel something real inside a situation that was designed to be temporary. Third time she had felt like a fool inside something she had trusted. "Good night," she said. She walked to her room, sat on the edge of the bed, was very still for a very long time. She opened her laptop. She kept working. She found it on a Wednesday afternoon. The location ping, the unauthorized entry, had been made from their shared home address, the penthouse she had paid half the deposit on. She cross-referenced the timestamp with her own calendar. She had been in a client meeting across the city that day. Security footage showed her arriving and leaving. She was not home. Yunya was. She finally had proof for the court. She built the rest over the following 3 weeks. Every layer, every trace. The trail from the Shin Capital accounts to the shell companies Junho had established to the founding capital of his own company. Documented with the precision of a woman who had built the system, being used as evidence and therefore understood every corner of it. She took it to court. She stood in front of a judge, and she was calm and thorough and exactly as brilliant as she had always been. The hearing took 3 months. At the end of those 3 months, the judge summoned Junho for questioning. Junho was not a man who accepted losing quietly. The court summons came, and he felt the ground shift underneath him. He had told himself she would not find anything he had not accounted for. Wan Kwan had not accounted for what it meant that she now had his resources, his legal team, his connections. The woman he had left with nothing had been given everything she needed to dismantle him piece by piece. He picked up his phone. The park organization did not meet in offices. They met in the back of a restaurant, closed to the public, for 11 years. Junho sat across from their representative and laid out what he knew: Zara's schedule, her routes, the time she was predictable, the building her legal team worked from. "I told you about her before, and you did not do anything," Jaewon said coldly. "Now she is plotting her escape to the United States with your money. I get informations like this." Junwoo lied. "We will need to send a message," the man said. "Yes, let her know you are watching." "She is Kwan's wife, though," another man said. "She stole from you. His name shouldn't change that. I'm sure they are working together to scam all of you." The representatives were quiet. Then one of them nodded. Junho left, feeling like he had made a move, like the game was not over. He did not understand that he had just made the last move he would ever make. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning in her bag. No name, no return address. 1. Jaewon found it by accident. Her badge fell from the side pocket, and when he moved to replace it, he saw the edge of the envelope. Something about it made him stop. The quality of it. The way it sat there, with no name, just a logo that he recognized. He opened it. He read it. She came out of the study 20 minutes later thinking about coffee and the document she had been building since 6 a.m. She turned into the hallway and stopped. He was standing at the console table with a piece of paper in his hands, his back half to her. Something about the way he was standing was wrong. His usual stillness was controlled, the stillness of a man always managing something. This was different. This was the stillness of a man who had just been hit by something and had not yet decided what to do about it. He heard her. He turned. She had lived with this man for 5 months. She had watched his face in meetings, across dinner, at the kitchen counter at midnight. She knew his face. She had never seen it look like this. His hands were not steady. "What is that?" she said. He started to fold the paper, quick, automatic. The movement of a man whose first instinct was always to manage what others saw, and she crossed the hallway in 4 steps and took it from his hands before he could finish. He let her take it. That was the thing that scared her most. He let her take it. She read it twice. Her name. An address she recognized. The building where she worked. They knew her office address. Someone wanted her hurt. And they knew where she was going to be. She looked up. He was watching her face, and she saw it, underneath the shaken, underneath the unsteady hands, something she had not seen on his face before. He was afraid for her. "Who sent this?" she said. "You don't have to worry." "Don't," she looked at him. "Don't manage this. Don't manage me. Don't give me the version you've decided I can handle. Who sent this?" "This logo." He looked at her for a long moment. "I know it. These people are dangerous and have no regard for anyone." "Then tell me what I'm up against. Tell me everything." Something in him did what she had watched him refuse to do for months. It gave way. Not dramatically, just a door opening that had been closed for a very long time. He sat down on the bench by the console table. Not because she told him to, because something had gone out of him when he read that letter, and he had been standing on it since she came into the hallway, and he could not stand on it anymore. She sat across from him, and he told her, not the managed version, the real thing, all of it. His father, being 26 years old and having something placed in his hands that he did not ask for and could not put down. Shin Capital, the real Shin Capital, the families, the money, the ecosystem of obligations his name sat at the center of. The fact that the people that sent this letter were one of the organizations that lost their money. The apartment was very quiet. She was looking at him. He looked back at her. And then, against everything, against 6 months and transactions and the careful management of what he let other people see, he said it. "Zara, I love you." Simple, direct, the way he said everything when he was not managing it. I have been trying not to say that since before I had any right to feel it, because I know this whole thing is just to get the real culprit. He looked at her. But now with all this, the fear of ever losing you, I think it's time to admit that what I feel for you is more thank business, and I think I should let you know." He stopped. "But don't worry, I'm going to manage this threat." She looked at him, this complicated, dangerous, careful, tender man, sitting across from her, with his walls completely down, and his heart where she could see it for the first time. She thought about everything he had done for her these past 5 months. She reached across. She took the letter from his hands. "No," she said. "I am going to handle this. No more bloodshed. I am going to get you proof that ends all of this. That proves to them it wasn't me, and that it was Junho. I'll do this not just for me," she held his gaze, "for you. I don't want you in any more unnecessary danger because of me," she said. "Zara, let me work." She stood up, walked back to the study, closed the door. She sat at her desk. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat on the desk and breathed and waited for the shaking to stop. Then she opened her laptop. She got to work. She sent the proof to Jae-won within 48 hours. Not just the court evidence, everything. The complete trail, the original theft, the software access, the money movement, Junho's company accounts. Documented, layered, undeniable. Jae-won sent it to the park organization with a single message. It said that they had the wrong information, that the man who stole from Shin Capital was Junho, that the woman they had been pointed toward was innocent and was his wife, that whoever had threatened her had made the last miscalculation of their career. It was signed with his name. The park organization read this and felt insulted. The proof was there. Junho had been playing them, trying to create a rift between two powerful families, and he was the culprit. They called Junho the following morning. He came thinking he still had allies. He walked into a room of men who had just discovered he had fed them false information, wasted their time, risked their exposure, and used their name as a weapon in a personal vendetta. They were not forgiving people. Took his company. The company built on stolen money was reduced to a name on a dissolution document. They collected every savings he ever had, including the ones he had before he stole from them. They told him he should always watch his back and that he was never going to be safe. And then Mina came. She came on a Thursday evening and sat across from him in the apartment he was about to lose, and told him without preamble that the child was not his. She had always known this. She told him the only reason she let him believe it was his was because he had money, and now he could not even pay for his own house. She told him she was done pretending he was not mediocre. She stood up. She left. He sat alone. No company, no money, no Zara, no Mina. Not even the lie was real. He had wanted to destroy her, had spent months constructing her destruction with careful, methodical patience. He had used her trust and her brilliance and her name, and she had not needed to do a single thing to him. He had simply, in the end, been exactly who he was, and that had been enough. And here he was, with the most dangerous family in Seoul, still looking to settle scores. The business deal had now expired. Zara had proven everything and had everything back. She was in the study when he knocked on the open door. "You are free. I'm sure you want to leave," he said. She looked at him. "Your name has been cleared. The company accounts have been unfrozen. The court issued the full statement yesterday. Your legal team sent it to every publication that ran the original story. You have everything you came into this needing." She set down her pen. "You are free. Whatever you decide, you are completely free. And you don't have to worry about that thing I said." The study was very quiet. She thought about everything. A man standing in the dark looking at a city like it owed him an answer. Hands that were not quite steady holding a letter. "I love you" said simply, without decoration, in the way he said everything. She stood up, crossed the study, stopped in front of him. "I'm not going anywhere, Junho. I want to see where we go, because I love you too," she said. He looked at her, and for the first time, without strategy, without performance, without the careful management of how much of himself was visible, Jae-won Kwon smiled. Not performed, not strategic. Just a man who could not believe he got to keep something this real. She looked at him smiling and felt something settle in her chest, something displaced for a long time, finding its way back to where it belonged. Also, she said, your mother called me yesterday. He went still. What? She wants to have lunch. Apparently, she read the full court statement. A pause. I think she might be coming around. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, the kind that surprised him, the kind that came from somewhere he did not usually let things come from. She looked at him laughing and thought that this was perhaps the best thing she had ever seen. If this story moved you, if you felt any part of Zara's journey in your own chest, share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Have you ever had someone use your trust as a weapon against you? Have you ever been surrounded by people performing loyalty while planning your destruction? Tell us in the comments. This community sees you. And if you are not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button right now and tap the notification bell. We tell Afro-Korean stories every single week, and the next one is coming sooner than you think.